in the audience to the Carver Earth Removal Committee meeting for July 2nd, 2024. Everybody, including the board, could silence your cell phones, please. If we get into any discussion, the board members will be recognized first, then the audience may or may not be recognized, and we'll put a time limit of 2 minutes on that. I've got the right to stop any conversation whenever I see fit, and please keep comments to yourself unless you are called on. I don't think I got to say it today, but outbursts will not be tolerated. Things get out of hand, we'll call a recess and reconvene after action's been taken. And then Area 58, you are recording today. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Dan. Anybody else recording today? Excellent. Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from May the 28th, which we do not have yet. So we'll revisit those in August.
I was thinking I was a derelict and everybody got them on their cell phones.
So we're waiting on those for the next meeting, and that's perfectly acceptable to do that. So we're in good shape there. I've got a proposed next meeting date for all of us, and it is in fact August the 6th, which is the first Tuesday of the month, at 4 o'clock in this room. August 6th at 4 o'clock. Okay.
It's gonna, we used to meet the end of the month. Now we're meeting the first of the month.
We are. It's to accommodate Kevin's schedule.
Yeah, okay. I'm good.
Anytime. No sense having you if you can't be here because you've got a conflict, right?
Yep, okay.
Excellent. So August the 6th, 2024, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, meeting room 1 at the town hall here.
That works for me, Mr. Chairman.
We don't take a vote or a motion for that, right? We just set the date, right?
You have the authority to just set the date.
All right, we set the date. That's good. So, Kevin, it's up to you. Would you prefer to be called agent or inspector?
Kevin.
Because I've got you as an agent. You sound like an FBI guy if you ask me, so. Kevin, if you've got anything to report, we'd be grateful to hear anything.
I do. So I'm in essence involved with just 2 projects so far, because I didn't want to get involved with past projects that I had no idea what was going on. So the 2 projects that I am following right now on behalf of the board is the 104 Tremont Street, which is the Eric Pontiff site, and the other is the 80 Makepeace Company at the corner of Cranberry Road and Federal Road. So I've visited both sites. I spent close to an hour at each one, just observing.
Nice.
Looking for things like dust control. So basically what I do when I go to the site is I review or reintroduce myself to the conditions of approval and the plans, and then I go to the site with those in mind. So what I'm looking for is things like dust control, the traffic patterns, where they're working in particular, because these 2 projects are actually phased projects. So you have the Makepeace site, which is phase, I think there's 3 or 4 phases,
There.
and then the Pontiff site, each block is another phase. I think there's 5 altogether. So again, I want to make sure that they're adhering to the phases, that they're not, venturing off into other parts of the property and chasing gravel here and there, or product here and there. So first at the 80 Makepeace project, when I was with the board the first time, they had the engineer there, they had the operator, or the managing operator there, and they explained the phases and what they were doing. And if you recall, the part closest to Cranberry Road was an area where the bogs was somewhat taking shape, but they weren't anywhere near there. It looked to me yesterday, like that entire bog system, bog number 1, has all the sand leveled. It appears as if they've got the, I saw a lot of blue flags, so I'm assuming that was the laying out the irrigation. They're adhering to that section. So the bog was the first thing. Those are 150-foot sections, there are 4 of them. So the next part of that in the sequence is to dig the irrigation pond. They haven't really started that, but you can tell when you're there that the bogs are, higher, and that they've left that area low to dig the pond.
Nice.
So, while I was there, the other thing I looked at was trying to gauge the truck traffic. I'm gonna say that I saw probably in an hour, I saw probably about 6 round trips. Trucks coming in, trucks going out. So if you extrapolate that over an 8-hour day, it's about 48 trucks. So, shy of putting a, some sort of a counter there, it gives you a rough idea as to whether they're exceeding the 50 trucks a day that the conditions require.
Nice.
So, it's a big site, but, they are actually building the bogs, and, that's what the board wants. To see an end use to the operational. Any questions on that one before I go on to the pontiff site?
Anybody from the board? So I was there a few weeks ago as well. The sand was going out. I observed the same thing. It was on the weekend, so I didn't see any trucks. But I'm happy to hear that in the last couple of weeks, there's flags out there to be going at it. I have spoken with the Makepeace representatives, and they will have that planted this summer. So very, very happy with what I saw as well, so I'm really happy to hear you say the same.
Okay. All right, so on to the pontiff site. Again, a phased project. They're, by this plan, they're working on proposed bog number 1. If you recall, those bogs kind of follow the I guess it would be the southern end of that property, and so it's 1 through 5, and so they are definitely in phase 1 or bog 1. It doesn't look like they've done a lot of removal. I don't know when they got started, but they've got a ways to go on phase 1. I'm happy to report that when I was out there, and I don't know if it was because I was out there, but irregardless, they have a water truck, and they were watering the road from the actual operation all the way out to Tremont Street.
Nice.
And the same goes for the truck traffic. I stayed there long enough to get a kind of gauge how many trucks were coming in and out, and I think they're right on par. So, that being said, I'm thinking maybe what I'd like to do is probably, I don't know if it's really going to be necessary to do it before the next meeting in August, but maybe by mid to late August, I'll probably have an actual, a formal meeting with
Perfect.
the landowner, whoever's managing the project, and maybe the engineer. I'm not so sure if that's necessary, but so that's my thinking. Toward the end of August, I'll have a formal meeting and go over things, and then report back. One other thing I was going to ask is, I know that the board has some sheets that you've used on site visits before. If it's all right with you, when I do a formal visit, I'd like to use the same sheet. if
That
you
would
guys
be
are comfortable with it.
That would be, in my opinion, that would be spectacular. It would be keep everything uniform.
Yeah.
Makes it easy to read and understand because we've all seen it. So I would love that.
Okay.
And Carol can get you a copy of that, and if she can't, I can email you what I use.
Okay, all right.
And I just been printing them off and giving them to everybody. So
All right.
Does anybody have any comments to Kevin's report on Pontiff?
I do. I know you're not as familiar as some of us that are in the cranberry industry as to the actual developing a bog.
Yeah.
So I like your approach to it. You're observing and you're reading what we've set up as a plan, and so I think that you're going about it in a professional way, and I think that goes a long way for our community and us. So thank you.
Yep.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll echo Mr. Ward's comments. I do thank you. Your perspective is much appreciated. And it's nice that you were able to spend the time out there unasked and not handled while you were out there, if you will. So I think that that's really nice, that you can go and sit and watch and observe and see. So for that, I do thank you. And I think this is the right approach, like Mr. Ward said, for the board, for the community, for the applicant as well. So I think that that's all good. The only thing I will say is I was also at the Pontiff site. I was down there on Saturday. The first thing that struck me is that when we asked for the road to be widened at Federal Furnace so 2 trucks could pass, it is wide enough for trucks to pass. So I'm certain it's probably 3, and they took it to heart, I believe. When I was in there on Saturday, there was no activity, but the road had been wet, and you could see that it had been wet. So I was very, very happy to see that. It's a long way out there, and they've done a very good job of protecting the bogs and stuff like that along the way too. So I think they've again taken what this board has done, what the community's asked for, to heart, and we've got 2 really good projects going on here. Thank you very much, Kevin. That was great. Anybody have anything
I do
for?
have a question.
Sure.
Kevin, have you taken a look at the files or taken a look at the files and just,
On these projects?
no, just in general, the filing system we have?
Oh,
Or is
yeah,
that
yeah,
something to,
Yes.
is that, as far as organizing those, we'd talked before about maybe digitizing or taking a look at that. And I'm not I don't assume
Right.
there's any progress. I just want to make sure it's still on the
The only,
radar.
I haven't really looked at the files. I mean,
Yeah.
I grabbed these 2 files in particular.
Yep.
I mean, there are services out there that have digitized that. It's not anything that we have the capability of doing here in town hall.
IT is working on it for us.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
they
John is working on it.
Good, that was,
So
okay.
it's not something that the town of Carver has yet to get it live to go to the town of Carver website, like we had talked about, seeing the permits and what's available to just the board and what's available to the public. Just yet, that's not there. He is working on it. So that in and of itself it was a nice ask, to be quite frank, Roger. And I think that in time we will get there, so we can see all this paperwork, have it in a digital format,
Okay, good.
and then we'll be able to send it live to the website in the future. It's gonna take some time. There's just no 2 ways around it.
Well, he's the right guy to be doing it.
It,
It wouldn't be me.
oh no, and I would never ask that, because
Well,
when I get behind a computer,
well,
when I get behind a computer screen, I'm all thumbs. So John is the right guy with IT. But he is aware, and he is working on it for us.
Thank you.
I have a question. Who did you meet with at each project?
I didn't meet with anyone.
Okay,
That's why I said I will do a formal meeting with them in late August. I just wanted to put my eyes on what was going on and to verify that they, again, are in the right phase.
Yep.
And, you know, that they're meeting the conditions that this board put together.
thank you very much.
I love the fact that we obviously have the authority to roll in, and all the applicants have told us we can. So it's not something that's an adversarial position, and I just love the fact that you just went in and observed that.
They all waved at me.
Yeah,
Well, they saw the vehicle. They saw your
I hope you
vehicle.
weren't number 1.
They saw your vehicle.
But I am driving an old, hand-me-down cop car too.
Yep,
With the blue plates.
yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Does anybody have anything else for Mr. Forg? Excellent. The last thing we have on the agenda, if we want to even be bringing it up and talking about it, is a continued discussion on load counts for agricultural peak seasons. We had talked about this a couple of times now. We've not come to a resolution. It's not something we've got to hurry with. It's something that I think should be a thoughtful discussion. And it's something, if we want to toss the idea, we toss it and never talk about it again. If it's something we want to continue with, I think it's a good idea that we do discuss it and keep that momentum going. It's a slow time for us, obviously. The last thing on the agenda is is this before adjournment. So it's a good time for us to be talking about it proactively before we end up in a reactive situation where we've got somebody in front of us that wants to have something that we're not fully vetted yet. Does anybody have any comments? You want to let it go for good? You want to let it go till next time? Yes, Mr. Wood?
I think we need to address it. I think we need to try to come up with something. I'm not sure, I haven't done much thinking about it since the last meeting, since we talked about it, but I do know what I've gone through in a little scale compared to other growers. And I know that when it happens, you need the sand, you need it pretty fast. I mean, we did 80 loads on an acre, 1.4 acres of triaxle sand. I mean, that's a lot of sand. And, but if you don't get it on there and you can't get it all leveled, then you can't get the sprinkler system in prepared and in. You can't get anything ready, you can't plant. And I'm thinking about that first phase at Makepeace. You know, planting late in the season, you're losing a lot of growing time. So you really need to try to plant in the spring or at least in June. And you get into July and August in the hot weather, you don't get as much growth for that first year. And you really don't like losing a year of growth because that means you're losing possibly a part of a crop or a whole crop.
That's right.
So Dick, I have a question for you. You're a small grower. So when you say triaxle trucks, you need like 40 of them. Are you talking, you're a small grower, so you just have like one truck coming and going and trying to get the work done?
We did,
Right.
yes.
So,
But it takes quite a while, and it would be easier if we could get a larger volume of material in a shorter period of time and get it done. And that's why I was concerned with it, and I know John
yeah.
spoke
Well,
on it
that's why I
too.
think it's not fair for like a small grower to like really have to be under the watch because you don't have the trucks or the manpower to do, you know, an all-day running back and forth and other people smoothing the sand and doing the work. You know, you're just a handful of guys or
I think that
employees.
it probably comes for, if I'm purchasing from one of the big permits, they're limited, because they're supplying sand for other projects, because there are a number of bogs being renovated this year. I mean, you
Right,
can go
yeah, I
right down
noticed,
Route
yeah.
58 and see Don
Mr.
Fernandez is
Fernandez,
doing,
yes.
just finished his, and John said he's doing one, and the big growers are doing bigger ones. And so the supplier of the sand is the one that needs to get permission to supply sand to whoever it might be.
Okay.
That's my thoughts, because there's a limited place that we can get sand from. I mean, on
No, I
my
get
land,
that,
I
yeah.
don't have the kind of sand I need for that renovation.
Well, I'm saying that's why I'm like, how can
Yeah.
you really do a load count on a smaller person? Because just, it's like going to the grocery store. On certain days, it's busier than others.
Well,
So,
the
like
load count
going to the-
would be coming out of the pit. not going into the property.
Okay.
So that's where, like Mr. Ward is saying, either be Pontiff or Makepeace, they are limited on how many truckloads they have. So throughout the course of the year, they've got a 50-load permit, so they factor that in. And now when a grower wants sand, they only have 4 or 5 loads additional. So whether it goes to him or the other guy with 1 truck, when he would like to have 4 or 5 trucks repeating and get the job done in 2 days instead of 2 weeks, type of thing.
That's kind of,
Okay, well, that makes
What-
sense,
you know, I
like, to
don't
somebody
know.
who doesn't
Right.
know how it works, so.
Absolutely.
I
so
think
what
it's-
is that gonna cause as problems on traffic or
Right.
school bus stops or anything else? You know, I mean, those are all things we need to concern ourselves when we're considering adding trucks to that permit, I would think.
I would absolutely agree with that, and I think some properties, some permits are not feasible to add to the load count, and I think other ones may be. Depending on the location of the pit, of course. And that would be part of a consideration, I would think, we would look hard at. I think we also, when we talked about this last time, we would also bring in Department of Public Works, we'd bring in the police, we'd bring in fire, and make sure that if we were to increase a load count, if we were to, that we've brought in public safety, and we've talked about that as well with them.
It's like alerting people of there's gonna be a little increase, or,
We're certainly asking what their thoughts are from, say, the police department or Public Works, certainly. Those two, in my opinion, are the big ones that have to deal with the traffic.
how many pits do we have access to?
Well,
And I get it, it's probably not just Carver that's wanting the dirt from the pits, it's other towns, which are gonna add traffic to the roads. But if we concern ourselves with our Carver growers more so.
so the only thing this board can talk about really is the permits that we have issued. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So regardless of where the material from our 7 or 8 active permits go, that's up to them. Our purview is how many truck trips per day they have, regardless of where they go. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
But
A little
weren't we
clearer.
saying that if we ask for the additional permit, the additional loads, wouldn't that have to be agriculturally targeted?
Nice
Can't do
segue. I think, yes, I think it needs to go to cranberry production, period. It can't go to a cement plant, if you will.
Yeah,
right.
So, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of pieces of this puzzle that are moving around, and we do need to get to the bottom of it if we want to continue the discussion. I think it's a permit by permit case basis. I think it's, again, a discussion with public safety, with DPW and the police and the fire, to make sure that they're on board with it. But it really is gonna come up to the applicant to ask us for something.
yes.
I don't think personally, I wouldn't wanna just give out a blanket X additional loads during whatever peak season we
Oh,
choose.
correct. They should
I would
get
want them to
permission.
ask, and in this instance, I wanna know where it's going and how many loads a day, and when it's started and when it's done.
So would the mechanism be a special permit?
I would think it would be an addendum to a permit, personally. I would not want them to go through another engineering process. I would want them to come in front of us and ask for an amendment for a finite amount of time for this particular customer or that particular customer.
I absolutely support the concept of making it easier for our farmers to get sand. This is complicated, though.
It is.
It can even come down to, I can see an angle here where the commercial guys could say, okay, I got an extra 30 loads a day, so I'm gonna run everything up to the concrete plants, the 30 I'm gonna run the farming, or.
Right.
You can see that, so I think we'd have to be really careful as we go, which seems to be the sentiment of the board. But I would love to find a mechanism to do that.
So I think there's a few pieces of the puzzle that we really need to drill down on. Number one is, do we want to even discuss it, right? And I think I'm hearing yes. The second part would be what we would consider a peak season for this additional permit, amendment, if you will. Then it would go to, do we want to hold the applicant's feet to the fire to tell us who it's going to, when they're gonna start, when they're gonna stop, on a daily basis, maybe? Kevin, I'm gonna look to you for this. Maybe an email to you or you and I that says, hey, listen, we're gonna do 10 loads to Mr. Ward today, or something along those lines, so we have a very, very good tracked number. So that way there, we can see what's going on. Not in a lag period like we have now with a monthly reporting. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
Okay. Yeah, agreed.
What I think I'd like to see is a small working group, maybe a couple board members with Kevin.
I was gonna suggest a subcommittee
Yeah,
to
and
maybe kick this around and try to work something out.
you know, we can do 2 board members with the agent and get some parameters kind of established for full board discussion. If the board thinks that might be a good way to go.
I think that
Yeah.
would.
I think that would be smart of us to do
So,
that.
not a subcommittee, because then we have to have minutes and stuff like that, but if Kevin, if Kevin calls a couple of people, no more than 2, you guys, whoever it happens to be, can meet and just kind of flesh this stuff out a little bit, bring it back to the board for a full discussion, and then we can have it be an open session discussion. And then maybe that particular little working group goes back to the drawing board, if you will, or maybe not. I don't know.
Would
but
you
that-
wanna have one of the permit holders to sit in with this group?
I think that would be up to Kevin.
It would make sense
What I
to
was
talk
gonna
to.
suggest is you should agree amongst the board, you know, who the 2 are, and then give me a call and we can set up a time.
I can't do that.
You can? Okay.
So
All right, okay,
I'd like you to do that offline and have a small working group.
okay.
That way there, you've got help to do that with whomever you think it is. No more than 2 board members. You can certainly have
Other people as well.
an applicant, you can have a townsperson, you could have something like that on the working group, but no more than 2 earth removal committee members, please.
All right.
And you might want to enlist the help of maybe Mr. Woods at DPW.
Well, I
May-
was gonna suggest that if you're gonna put a group together, since you're gonna end up going to public safety anyway,
Yep.
have them part of it.
Again, I'm going to leave this,
Right from the get-go.
I would leave this in your very capable hands to decide on who should be part of that little working group. And I think that would be very, very wise on your part. That way there, we've got different sets of eyeballs on it and different ideas. Does that sound good to the board? John, did you
Yeah,
have something?
sounds great. I'll echo the other comments, fully support further discussion in regards to additional truck counts for ag use. I've been thinking about this a lot, and a way to try to incentivize the contractors to want to supply growers and to keep the prices competitive. Could we institute a mechanism for every X amount of commercially directed trucks that they took away from their daily truck count, they could expand upon their total truck count, that number of trucks beyond it, if it's going for agricultural use? I didn't explain that well. But if they sacrifice 10 trucks a day, that would allow them 20 trucks to supply
Or like a matching program.
for agriculturally
Yeah.
used material. It would incentivize them to be able to get more trucks out in a day, possibly keep the price a little lower for our growers, because all this whole situation has done is just skyrocketed the price of material.
That's right.
So to try to find a way to keep this competitive, that's just one mechanism kept bouncing around in my head, was to sacrifice commercially directed material and substitute it if it's gonna go for agricultural use. But to Scott's point, and I've said it before, I would demand absolute transparency, whatever it took administratively for us to do, in order to reassure the community and everybody that it's going for bog use, because it's ultimately, you know, we've all decided that's what we want in this town, is open space and a healthy cranberry industry, so.
Correct.
Yeah, just food for thought. Brian Wick, Triple CGA, great resource. He might have some ideas to help you build a team for a working group. Love the idea of public safety officials. That's the #1 concern of mine. We have a great track record here in the town of Carver with earth removal.
That's right.
No major accidents that I've ever been made aware of, and certainly since I've been on here, so I'd like to keep it that way. Another thing I think we need to consider is triaxles versus trailers. You know, they don't move the same amount of material, they don't move around on the streets at the same speed. I don't know what the safety between the different trucks is, but I reside on Tremont Street, and I see the responsible entranceway that Eric has made at Federal, and he keeps it watered down, but I see all triaxles going in and out of there, and I'm thinking to myself, geez, they're only moving half the material. But for cranberry growers, sometimes triaxles are more efficient for us because they're quicker, they can get in tighter spaces. So to maybe not just link this to truck counts, but to actual yardage going over the road.
Interesting. Yeah.
So anyways, that's just what I've been thinking.
Well, you guys did your homework, so that's really nice. I asked for you guys to give it a little bit of thought last time, and looks like we've got a pretty robust way to go forward. Again, Kevin, you can set this up. I know it's summertime, there's vacations and such like that that'll happen. Now is the time for us to be talking about this instead of November or December, when, you know, when we know that we're gonna go down this road with certain parameters, and then we're being reactive. So being proactive now is wildly beneficial, in my opinion.
And if I might just add, Scott, you
Sure.
asked peak season dates. The way the cranberry industry's transformed recently, ice sanding's become almost non-existent with climate change, and we've all been forced to find alternative methods for getting sand on our bogs. The more modern renovation processes allow us to plant in months that we would never consider in the past. There's agricultural activity going on year-round.
Right.
Yes, it can get consolidated if we were to get ice in the middle of the winter. If we did have a great state renovation grant or something become available, it can get more condensed, but generally speaking, we're doing ag work year-round now, sanding, renovation. So I don't think the peak season necessarily needs to be an element in all of this, if the end use is actual agriculture. So-
I like the thought, to be honest with you. And again, I think all of these things, this is not a blanket shift that I'm seeing from the board. I think it's a case-by-case basis from an applicant's ask.
Yep,
And then it's obviously not a gimme.
yep.
You know, you've got to have a customer, you've got to have a plan, you've got to have reporting, you know, that type of stuff. I think maybe the peak season discussion changes to agricultural use. Hadn't thought about that.
And then then I think of holes in the rule, and you know, stockpiling comes to mind. You know, it wouldn't necessarily be right for a grower to be using this exemption just to stockpile sand if we can't document that it's going to be used for agricultural use
That's
in a
right.
timely manner. You know, it's just, I think it's it would only be fair to keep, you know, long-term stockpiling out of it. But that's all. But
Thank you, John. Love the thoughts. Anybody have anything else on this? Okay. So Kevin, if you could, when you think the time is right, get a group together, have some meetings, discuss it, come back with some parameters for the board to discuss. Love it. With that, lady and gentlemen, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Audience
we have
comment.
an audience call. You're interested?
Do we have, I'm sorry, I apologize for not looking.
You were doing two jobs. You were being the secretary.
Yeah.
Gail DeTomaso, 2C Meadowbrook Way. I want to thank Kevin for doing what he did. I enjoyed talking with him. Especially if you're going to seriously do the increased truck count. I think what I'm talking about is apropos of what the future may be involved. We want to have transparency, and I agree. I could be wrong in this, but as far as I can tell from your bylaws for permit requirements, under permit conditions, the applicant is required to cover the cost of monitoring the project by an agent of the committee's choosing. Does that agent have to be a person? Can that agent use equipment? The state would provide free monitoring if it was close on 58 or 44. Towns don't do it. You get it from the state, and it's free, but it's not the right location. There are companies who do it. My thought is that also, under the general provision, if 919A, if the permit holder becomes a nuisance or a public danger, there are cease and desist activities, protocols, blah, 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 blah. There are a lot of people that are aggravated with the truck count now. If you increase it, I expect that aggravation level will increase. If the permit holder, the big ones with the big truck counts, have to pay for the rental for the town to rent some of that equipment, especially during the agricultural season, it seems like it's an idea to consider.
I thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm sorry for not looking earlier. Oh, I didn't want to do it twice in one meeting, so. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Roger? Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Ward? All those in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Well, thank you all very much. Have a safe and happy 4th of July.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a month.
Good observations.